Yeah. I'll hand you over to Paul.
It's telling me my internet connection's unstable. Anyway, we'll try it. Okay, my name's Paul Slaney. I live in South Wales in the UK, for the guys that are not from the UK. I live on the banks of a river called the Usk. I've lived here for probably the last 37 years, something like that. I think I'm a lucky guy. Not only have I got that out the back there, I think I've got the best job in the world, and that's building exhibition stands. And what that's allowed me to do is travel all over the world since I was in my early 20s. And of course, you know, if you're into fishing, there's only so much drinking you can do. So if you're into fishing, and let's say you go to Rotterdam to do an exhibition, you've got a few days work, then you're there for a week waiting for the show to finish, and then you take it down and bring it home. So what I do and did for all that time is use that time to look out fishing and go fishing and try different techniques, different species, different places all over the world. And it's been a fantastic life so far. Touch wood, I've got a fair bit of it. I'm not retired yet, so I've got a bit more to go. Yeah, so, you know, it exposes you to all sorts of techniques, all sorts of different ideas, all sorts of fly fishing for different species. And, you know, if you go back to your roots here, particularly, it's a wet fly thing. And round about the 1840s, there was a guy on the Usk, a keeper, or in those days, they were river watchers, and they were there to stop people poaching salmon with nets. Who had a correspondence with a field magazine around about 1840, 1845, and he named 6 patterns. And one of those is a fly called the cockabondy. And that's a famous Welsh fly. Everyone's heard of it. I know it's quite popular in New Zealand, maybe even South Africa, Gordon, I don't know. But around here, it's for the lakes, it's a religion fly. So I'm going to start with that. And it's a technique of tying wet flies that might be a bit different to what you've seen before. So I'm going to do this on a basic wet fly hook. I'll put it in the vise, and I better show you a different camera, yeah? How's that, guys? Does that come up?
No, not yet. Have you shared the screen?
Yeah, it should be.
There we go. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so this is a lake fly mainly, although guys do fish it on the rivers. And in 1840, the keeper, a guy called Mr. Aitchison, was writing to William Senior of the Field magazine, who went into great detail on his 6 patterns for the Usk, all of them wet flies, except the cockabondy. And all he said on that in 1840 was the usual dressing. So it's been around for a lot longer than that. It just assumed that everybody knew what a cockabundy was, even in 1840. You know, so cockabundy is a representation of a beetle that hatches in the lakes in Wales, mid Wales. It's a brown, reddish brown, small beetle. Comes out May, June time on the lakes. Fish love it. Fish love it. So cockabundy, people think it's a Welsh word for red with a black butt. Well, that's not true. There is no word cockabundy in the Welsh dictionary. Yeah, coch means red, the means black, bon, nobody knows. So where that actual term comes from, nobody knows. It's definitely not a real Welsh word, but everybody knows cockabundy beetles, and everybody knows cockabundy hackles. And cockabundy hackles are a black base to the hackle fiber, paler middle, which could be red, could be white, could be badger, and black tips. The accepted one is black, red, black. And a lot of chicken breeding went on in South Wales around about that time, and it was Old English gamecocks. And when they say gamecocks, they mean fighting birds, birds to fight. They made it illegal in around about 1845. But those guys carried on breeding hackles for tying flies And they were particularly sharp, spiky, well-defined hackles. Bear in mind, they came off fighting birds, and they were a type of armor. So they're very stiff and shiny. And I'll show you some. This is a hackle breeder. It was the last hackle breeder in the Usk Valley. And this is an unpublished manuscript of his book. He died before he published it. And in here, all handwritten, are all the old recipes for the flies, sections on how to breed the chickens, how to feed them, how to grow them, when to pluck them. And somewhere else, the actual hackles, what do I do with them? My hand just now. Yeah. So in here, all the old standard hackle colors. So if we look for cockabundi, pale ginger, light red, deep red, dark blue, dark dun, black, badger, ditto, brassy dun, light blue dun, medium brassy dun, medium blue, cockabundi, 46. Number 46. Let's try and get it. Number 46, let's find you. There he is. A Welsh cockabundi hackle, bred by a Welsh fighting cock breeder. And if you look at these hackles, the fact that they're short in length, the quality is absolutely astounding. There's a grizzly, of course, but of course it's not a grizzly, it's a Plymouth Rock. Just thought you might find this interesting, guys, because this is definitely something you don't see every day. And there's all the duns, honey dun, brassy duns. You wouldn't be getting more than one fly per hackle out of these, but you know, I'm so tempted to use one, but anyway, so just a bit of interest there for you lads. So, you know, these old colors, I mean, the popular ones in this area were Andalusian, which is breeded chicken, obviously, which is a very dark grey dun, cockabundi. The two main, a lot of the flies off the Usk were Andalusian, dark blue duns. Very grey flies, you know, grey wings, grey hackles, grey thread bodies, you know, but then most ephemerids you see on the river are either olive or grey, aren't they? Apart from the yellow may and the mayfly. Anyway, I digress. So the other thing about these old flies, I mean, you know, if I want to see a fly that someone ties, I ask them for one, you know, I write them a letter and say, can I have one of your flies? When they come, I take them apart to see how they've tied them. It's amazing what you learn by doing that. And a lot of these old flies I've acquired over the years, I've taken them apart and seen how they've been built in the past. So here's the way a cockabundi was built around about 1890. Okay, so the hook, this is a size 12 wet fly hook, barbless. This just happens to be a Sprite. The thread they use is quite thick, but the way they tied the fly was very economical. So they tied a delicate, light fly with thick thread just by thinking about how they tied material in and how they used the thread. Yeah, so a lot of the flies were tied more or less back to front. So this is 6/0 thread, nothing fancy, it's just Danville. And then we'll take a hackle. I haven't got any of those fancy cockabundi at the moment, so I'm just going to use a really shitty cape that I dyed fiery brown. So this is where the hackle goes in. So and it goes in, tip first, facing up, right behind the eye. 1, 2, 3, 4 turns is enough. That's too dark, isn't it, lads? Let me turn the light on.
That's better, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I say it's a shitty hackle, it's not. It's a very good hackle, but the color isn't correct. Absolutely correct. But I don't really care about that. It's the it's the same sort of effect that we're looking for. It's this dark center with the reddish tips. So now the body of a cocker bundy is peacock herl. Let me see if I can find some. I'm going to take 3 for a size 12. I'm going to look along its length for the flexible part, because it can be quite brittle, especially if it's from China and it's been in a packet most of its life, which this has. Again, tie this in, face it out over the hook eye. About 4 turns, we can break that off. So now we've put the hackle in, the body in, and we haven't even used 1 layer of thread yet, which is how these boys used to keep these dressings really light and delicate. And I think it's quite an interesting way of tying flies. Fast, economical. And the next one was gold tinsel. Of course, they use metal tinsels, which I have, but I don't particularly like using, but so I'm going to use mylar. So this is gold one side, silver the other. And to get the proportions now, I take the thread to the point of the hook. Now imagine there's a barb there. In my head, there's a barb there, yeah? So I catch it in, gold side up, diagonally across the hook. And you can tie in as many wraps there as you need to keep that secure. Yeah. Then I go down to where I imagine the barb would be, which is essentially 2 turns of a medium tinsel. Then back up. Untie those wraps you put in. Catch it off. 2 turns. So now we put in a hackle, the body, and a tag with 1 layer of thread. So leave your thread hanging there. Now the thread they used is quite brutal stuff. It really was quite strong. So even though this is sort of Danville 6 sword, it's still comparatively fine to what they used. But there you go. So bring these pearls vertically, run them through your fingers. And the beauty of tying herl in this way is that as you handle it, the flew on the herls goes in the direction you handle it, so you don't rough it up. So you wind that back to meet the tinsel butt. Keep it nice and tight, spin your thread a little bit, and rib the whole thing with the thread. Take your thread, park it in front of the hackle. This you can pull off, or you can cut it off, whatever. And with your hackle, don't fold it brutally, don't rub it with scissors, or you want to keep it a nice, open, mobile, working hackle. So when you pull it and move it, it moves. It's not forced back. Yeah, so don't fold it too heavy. So all you need to do is watch that leading edge as you wrap, because that's the one that's going to catch. So just tuck it out the way as you go. Tuck that leading edge out the way. 2, 3 turns. Bring it vertically. Catch it. Hold it back. Quarter fiber there, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Just finish it. Now, these old boys back in the 1800s really knew how to tie a fly, I think. I had a conversation with very famous salmon dresser, UK salmon dresser. And he said, if those old boys could come back and see how we tie flies today, they'd be very happy. And my argument was, well, yeah, maybe, but they throw away all the toucan and the, you know, all that, and they put gold beads on them because they, you know. And then there's this old boy called Kelson used to write books on salmon flies. Yeah, he'd probably say he invented the gold bead in 1810. But that's how it was done back then. So Welsh salmon fly, Welsh hackle, sorry, Welsh trout fly, Welsh hackle, cockabondi, red with a black base. That's just a different way of tying, boys, that I thought you might find interesting, that's all. Now, the beauty of that is if you're doing a lot of commercial tying, and I tie a lot of flies, it's almost tying by numbers. Yeah. So I'll just run through that again, just to show you how it works. If we go into the detail, you've got to crack out 100 of these, or 200, or 500, or whatever it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where you catch in the hackle. So now you know that once the hackle goes in, every time it'll be in the same place. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 is probably enough. We know that when we put the tag in, it always goes in the same place because we're measuring it against the point. And that's how you get fine hackles and fine heads on flies, and each one the same. 1, 2, 3, couple of turns, couple of turns, tie it off. I see lots of guys struggle with hackles. Getting them to sit, you know, they're having to force them back all the time, having to manipulate them with their fingers. Well, we're used to seeing hackle like this. A lovely card, you know, nice and flat, beautiful, yeah. But on the chicken, it doesn't grow like this. You know, this has been processed, it's been dried flat. Yeah, on the chicken, it grows like this. It's a three-dimensional object. Let me just change cameras to, yeah. So it's a three-dimensional object. Yeah, it fits around the back of the chicken's neck, and these hackles go down either side of his head. It's a bit like a, you know, teddy boy haircut. You know, the comb with the cockerel comes up here, or the hen comes up here. The saddle comes out underneath. And when you look at it this way, you'll find that, like many feathers in any bird, you get left and right. Feathers on this side of the cape curve one way, and this side they curve the other way. Down the middle are dead straight. And if you look here, I've had all those feathers because they're the best ones. Yeah. So let's have a look at that. People ask me, when do you tie in a hackle by the butt, and when do you tie in a hackle by the tip? Yeah, so this is how I think of it. So let's just do it another way. So I'm a right-handed tyer. So when I wrap a hackle, I wrap it away from me. So I'm looking for a hackle with the curve going in that direction. So let's look. This is, as I'm looking at the cape, this is from the right-hand side. Yeah. If I tie this one in by the tip, the curve is going in the right way for me because I'm right-handed. Yeah. Now, they're not always like that because sometimes you pull them out the other side of the cape. So if you pull them out the other side of the cape, the curve's going the wrong way. If I tie it in by the tip. If I tie it in by the butt, the curve's going the right way. And the hackle will always wrap without fighting it. So sometimes you tie a fly and the hackle just doesn't do what you want it to do. You know, half the time, that's why. It's true of dry fly hackle as well. It's a little bit of interest for you to play around with, boys. So if you were to tie a wet fly hackle in by the base, I'd do it very similar.
You'll have to share the screen.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. Sorry, lads. Yeah, so now I'm going to tie it in by the butt. So I take the hackle, good side up, just put it in under the shank and go back maybe 4 or 5 turns, get rid of all this nonsense. There's 2 ways you can do it. Some people call it reverse hackle, right? Which is basically a palmer, because you're wrapping from the front to the back and then taking something through it to secure it. Yeah, or you can tie it off at the front like a normal sort of hackle. Okay, so either way, it doesn't matter. So now I like to use, my fingers are too big for this, so I'm going to need some hackle pliers, which I normally hate using. So now you can wind that hackle very nicely. From the butt. And it goes in, doesn't catch, it doesn't twist, it doesn't do anything wrong. So these are some thoughts for you boys on tying hackles on wet flies. Also applies to dry flies. You know, it depends if you tie them in under, over, whether you tie them in at the front, go back and forward. You know, there's lots and lots and lots of different ways of doing it depending on the effect. But that twist in hackle stems, especially you'll find it on saddles. You know those ones that want to twist on you. Yeah, try trying it in the other way around or wrapping it the other direction. So if you wrap it towards you rather than away from you, for instance. Yeah, that's enough of that. Let's do a fishing fly, boys. This is a size 6 saltwater hook. It's Partridge Sea Prince. I've taken the barb off. I used to do these exhibitions in Rotterdam, and I used to go there about 4 or 5 times a year, and like really boring work. But there's a lake just outside Rotterdam, just outside the Europort, called Oostvaardersmeer. It's a saltwater lake. It's flushed twice a day with the tide. There's basically an open rocky sea wall between it and the North Sea. It's about 440 acres. It's shallow. It's got a sandy bottom with beautiful weed beds. Water's crystal clear. It's in the most industrial part of the Netherlands, and it's ugly. It's horrible. But they stock rainbow trout in there at about 8 to 10 inches, and they grow on at a phenomenal rate because of the saltwater food coming in there. The lake's brackish, so it's full of shrimp. It's full of small fry, herring. It's the equivalent of a nursery ground for saltwater creatures to grow on. And the rainbow trout feed on this. The biggest one, last time I fished there, the biggest one that year was 1 meter and 3 centimeters long. I didn't catch it. 1 meter and 3 centimeters. They are the strongest, most beautiful rainbow trout you've ever seen anywhere, I think. You know, first time I went there, I'd heard about it. I read about it in the Salmon and Trout magazine. This was back in the 80s, you know, and I saw these pictures. I thought one day, you know, and there we were in the Ahoy Centre in Rotterdam building an exhibition, and it was literally just across the road. So I got myself a license. It was 45 guilders for a whole season, and we went down there fishing. And I caught the first trip. I caught 1 fish, and it blew my mind. It was so strong, so powerful. When I got it in my hands, it was just a thing of beauty, big dripping, solid, bright rainbow, absolutely beautiful. You know, ripped the line off my reel, and it took a shrimp pattern, just something we'd fish on the rivers, you know. But I saw a lot of activity there where rainbows were attacking shoals of small fish. So I believe these were baby herring, fish 2-3 inches long, masses of them. And the rainbows would just maraud into them and smash their tails about, stun these fish. One would float to the top, one would sink, and they'd come back and mop it up. It'd be a bit like dolphins feeding on a big school of sardines out in the ocean. But anyway, I could never get it out of my mind this day. So next time I went, I wanted a fly that I could use like that. So this is what I come up with. It's boring. I call it a bunny fry. It's made out of rabbit, but there's lots of reasons why I think it's very effective. Well, I know it's effective, but this is my thinking. So it was a saltwater hook because it was brackish water. Still is brackish water. You don't need to. It doesn't need to be a saltwater hook. But the first ones of these I tied was on a saltwater hook. So let's get a bit of focus. Yeah, so this uses simple materials, rabbit. So I catch the thread in towards the bend. Again, this is my sort of philosophy of less is more, or, you don't need to keep wrapping and wrapping and wrapping. You watch some videos on YouTube. You know what I mean? And then you want to strip a rabbit. I use 2 different types of rabbit on this. I use standard zonker and I use crosscut zonker. Yeah. You all know the differences, yeah? Between the two? Yeah, okay. So the first part of the fly is standard zonker. I just part it. Catch it in with a couple of turns of really strong thread. This is Vivus GSP, and it is solid. You don't need much of it. So I've just taken a good couple of tight turns. Keep it tight now. Open turns about 2/3 up the shank. So now I take my bit of crosscut. Catch it in with the fibers trailing to the rear. Tie that in really tight. Leave yourself a good bit of space at the eye. And now we take a couple of wraps, 3 or whatever. Crosscut. I find it's quite difficult stuff to tie off and keep it neat, So this is where my dubbing needle comes in. Excuse me, guys, I haven't got it set up properly yet.
If anybody's got any questions, if you
just
unmute yourself and ask Paul and then mute yourself again.
Just put a little part in there, get my thread in there. A couple of nice tight turns to tie that off, get in front of it. Nip it off as tight to the shank as you can. Yeah, it looks terrible there. Great. So now I'd get my dubbing needle and give it a center parting down the middle. So pull out all those port fibers. Stroke them back. Then take the front end of your bunny strip, tie it over the top, catch it in on top. Again, nice and tight. A couple of turns will do it with this GSP. Get in front of it. Now it's starting to look like something. Cut this body the length you want. Sorry, cut the tail the length you want, but I sort of cut the skin about the length of the white fur. You're starting to get your little fishy shape. You can put in a bit of flash if you want. I do. I don't always fish it with the flash in it, but I do put it in. You can always take it out. And I put in 2 very fine strands of that's Vineyard Pearl Micro Flash. It's quite fine stuff. Lift it, place it where you want it. You want it sort of in the lateral line position. Couple of turns, bring it over the other side, couple of turns, and it's in. You can trim that afterwards or leave it long, however you want it. But whatever you do, trim it different lengths because otherwise it tends to stick together. So you could whip finish the fly there and finish it there. It's, you know, perfectly fishable, but you know, being a fly tyer, sometimes you'd like to add a few things like eyes, whatever. So at this point, I put in a dubbing loop, or you could use split thread. This particular thread won't split because it's got a filament running through it that stops it fraying like most GSPs. Then take a little bit of your rabbit, the dark color on the back, maybe, so this is a size 6, so that's probably 3/4 of an inch long. Just catch it in there. Put your dubbing twister in. And cut off the skin. Good old spin on that. You get this sort of rabbit chenille. Just start wrapping it forward, putting it back, just like you're wrapping a hackle, really. What you're doing is creating a head. It's the same sort of color as the back of the fly. And then catch that off. We've got a nice, neat finish at the head. Still looks a mess. Now we've got a darker back, a lighter belly, really, really mobile materials. And the last thing we need to do is stick on some eyes. I just pop them on either side. And I like the eyeballs pointing backwards, like he's looking at something coming to attack it, you know what I mean? It's like the oh shit, look, big rainbow coming for me. Just slide them on. Gather everything back. Get the shape you like. Yeah, and a drop of super glue. And just put a drop on the top and a drop on the bottom. Hold it to the shape you want. There he is.
Nice.
There's a couple of different types of super glue you could use for this. There's a lot of, people talk about super glue not being waterproof, and, well, it is very waterproof. And if you take the time to read the data sheets about the super glue, which is cryoacrylic adhesive, it actually sets by evaporating water out of it. You can put it in a dishwasher. They mend car windscreens with it. Mate, what they don't do with it is unbelievable. The thing to do is you've got two things. They say it bonds in seconds, which it indeed does, but it cures in 24 hours. So when people say, I put super glue on the heads of my flies, and then I varnish it and it goes white, well, that's the moisture still coming out of the super glue because they've done it so quickly after, applying the super glue. So like anything, it takes time. So it's best to leave it sort of 24 hours if you're going to put a coating over the top of it. So that's the Osborne bunny. So this fly is, I tie it from a size 12 up to quite large sizes. And I've caught all sorts of fish on it: trout, bonefish, tarpons, tigerfish, Nemwe bream, fantastic fish, pike. Just tied in different sizes and different colors. I quite like the natural ones, but I've tied them in all sorts of shocking colors, really. That's the bunny fry. What's nice about this is unweighted. Okay, so when you see bait fish schooling in fresh water, especially in lakes, they stay at a level. They move up and down maybe with water pressure, feeding, but they stay in the level. They're not doing this. Yeah. So you want a sort of neutral fly that sinks neutrally, slowly, and you need to be able to control it to the level that you want it with the length of your leader. So there's no weight, there's no sinking fly length. So a long leader will let you get the depth. Shorter leader will keep it shallow. I like quite a stiff leader on this fluorocarbon, quite heavy, probably 11 pounds. And it's a nice stiff leader. And I tie it on with a loop knot, non-slip loop. So if you want it to get the action, the loop allows you to do that. Good fly.
Anybody got any questions?
No.
No.
Okay. Right. Salmon. Atlantic salmon. Big part of my life. Huge part of my life. The river flows right past my house. It's a very strange game. It's only half predictable when the water conditions are right. So you learn when, and you want a lot of rain, you want a river to rise, and you want it to fall. When the river's falling and clearing, that's the time to go. That's when the fish are moving up the river, and that's when they bite the best. So this little river here, we have good runs of salmon. And people have been fishing for salmon for so long. We know when it's good, So there's a rock down the road from where I live, and we call it the Croy Rock. Okay, and on that rock there's two white lines painted. They're about 8 inches apart. So you can drive across the bridge and look at a rock and see what the river level's at. Yeah, that 8 inches is the optimal 8 inches of those to go salmon fishing. Yeah, so you can tell by looking at that rock. If the water level is between the two white lines, that's good, yeah? If the water level is between the two white lines and the rock is wet above the water level, that's even better because the river's dropping. If the water level is between the two white lines and the rock above is dry, that's not so good because the river's rising. There's more water coming down. So it's a very opportunistic thing, salmon fishing. And yes, you can catch them in all sorts of conditions, of course you can. But the optimal time is that amount of water in the river. And what that means in our river in particular, it runs over red sandstone. So when the water comes up, it starts to run red. Now Tim will know this, and Dale will know this. It almost comes to look like milky tea. So we're looking for a combination of a drop-in river and visibility. You know, so like 18 inches of visibility is more than enough to catch salmon on. Bear in mind, these guys don't feed when they come into the river. So we're asking a lot. There's a guy down in West Wales, an artist, a salmon, sea trout, pike. He's a brilliant artist. His name's David Miller. And he ties these wonderful, paints these wonderful pictures of fish in the water, right? And you look at them and you think, my God, that's so realistic. And the reason is he gets in there with his wetsuit and his snorkel or his scuba gear, and he goes down the river or he swims through the lake and he takes photographs and videos of the fish in situ. And he lives quite close to my mother, so when I'm down there, I go and see him. And looking at some of his video footage is really interesting, especially when it comes to salmon, male salmon, cock salmon. Females do it to a similar extent, but what they are is very aggressive and very, very territorial. So they'll come into a pool, they'll hide away, they'll rest, they're waiting for the water to be good so they can push on up to lay their eggs. Yeah, but just Dave going down the river in his scuba gear, bear in mind, he's three times the size of a salmon, they'll come out of nowhere and attack him. They want to keep that alive for themselves. So when you see a salmon jump on a river, you think, oh, it's jumping, it must be feeding. Nope, there's a bigger salmon coming in and pushing him out, fucking him off. Yeah, he jumps and he goes and looks. You know, that's a good way of finding where salmon live. They come in on the tide, they push up the first sets of rapids, they come to the first pools and they rest. You know, and they rest in the same places every year, same places for hundreds of years. And on our pools, you know, the places are named. You know, they go down from generation to generation, names. Yeah. Anyway, so what's interesting about that is that salmon are very aggressive. They want to defend their territory. You know, they don't want to give up that lovely place to lie out of the current. You know, if you think about under the water, it's like I think of it like a mountain range. You know, and the wind is howling through those mountains. You know, and if you were up there and it was really uncomfortable, you try and get out of the wind. You know, you try and find a place that's sheltered. You know, and that's the place to look for sea trout and salmon. You know, so you try and think like that, three-dimensionally. Then you want to get your fly close to them to piss them off, because that's when they'll grab it. So I look with a salmon fly, I look for mobility. I look for something that'll sink quickly. There's very little resistance to water. To me, the colors do have a significance, but not much of one. Yeah, to me, it's got to be mobile material. It's got to have contrast. And the colors I choose, I like blue, I like pearl, and I like black. And blue is the last color visible on a color spectrum as light goes to night. So best type of salmon, dawn, dusk. Sort of figures that blue's going to be a color that stands out better than say orange or yellow or whatever. They all have their place, I'm sure. As the river drops in color, you know, you can use fluorescent colors and pearlescent colors to really make the fly glow. So a little of it, not too much. Make it glow, make it visible, make you be able to see it, so you can see it come through the water. See how it's swimming, whether it's going fast, slow, side on, deep, shallow. Make the alterations you need to make. You know, so it's. And of course, I think it's got to look like food. You know, a salmon that's been in the river for a couple of days. You know, a week ago he was eating sand eels or shrimps or squid or whatever he eats. You know, so I sort of try and go for this long sand eely type mobile fly that anyway works for me. So I like to use double hooks. I prefer them to tube hooks. I will use tube flies. I will use tube flies for certain things. And I like them to be relatively small. So this is a size 8, so I use it 8, 10, 12, sometimes 14. But if I want to change depth, I'd rather do it with leaders than by putting loads of weight on the fly, which I think in the type of river I fish particularly, it's not a big river, it's not powerful, you know, it's not going to hold that fly up, it's going to be dead in the water. I want this thing to flicker and move and just be live, you know. So material is very important for me, for salmon flies. We find some. So I'm going to go for like a really contrasty fly, really fast again. The river I fish is tree lined everywhere, you know, with spay casting, you know, salmon lay in all sorts of places. I'm trying to get those flies in under the trees, I lose a lot. I lose a lot of flies. You know, they're in the trees. I don't want them to be expensive. I want them to be simple, throwaway things like bullets, boom, boom, you know. So with the body of a salmon fly, I don't do much. I don't think tails do much. So this is uni stretch frost. It's quite a bright color, chartreuse. We're out of focus, boys. What you taught me. And then a rib, and a rib really just protects that floss. Maybe adds a bit of flash. I don't think of it beyond that really. And the one thing you'll see with my salmon flies that is a nod to the classics is I put a tip on them. So I catch my tinsel in, a couple of wraps, bring it between the hooks, and that automatically centers it. Keeps it in the same place. I like these particular hooks. These are Partridge Patriots. They've got a really consistent braze down the middle, join them together, making them strong. But it's so consistent you can use it as a measure. So again, if you tie in a whole bunch of these, you can easily tie them all the same. So then I take the floss back up. I don't worry about it being flat. I don't burnish it. I don't do any fancy stuff with it. Just wrap it on. Chartreuse, lovely. I take this tinsel, this is Uni Oval 14. I take a couple of wraps, or 3 maybe, back towards the hooks. And all that does is it stops the floss slipping off the back of the hook. Yeah, nothing else, I don't think. And then I just take the tinsel and tightly wrap it up. Again, you know, you could do this with wire and it'll be even stronger. I forgot something here, boys. Let me start that again. No, I've got it. So at this point, I catch in my tying thread, go up to the eye, back down. I'm using white because I'm going to put a color on it afterwards. Spin the thread around the floss 3 or 4 times, a couple of turns, and now that floss is tied off. It's not going anywhere. Catch my tinsel in. Tying in on the side of the shank is always good because if you're going to wrap a hackle or put a wing on this, especially wrapping a hackle, the tinsel cutting across that wide shank can push the hackle out of place as you try and wrap it. So I try and put it along the edge. So at this point, I'd put in some flash if I was using flash. Now, most of the time when a salmon hits, it hits from underneath. Yeah, it's not a deep fishing game salmon. They come up for it. You know, so if you're going to put flash in it, I see flies with it on the side, on the top. I don't get that because fish can't see it. So I always put it in underneath. And this is micro crystal flash, again from Vineyard, my favorite fellas. Catch it in, couple of turns, fold it back, won't come out. Cut it to whatever you want. So I'm going to leave that for a minute now, and we'll have a look at that afterwards. So now we'll put in a hackle. Where's my blue hackles? Right, I'm going to put in a hackle. Let's pretend this hackle's blue, right? Because I can't find one that I want. So we're going to put in this yellow hackle and pretend it's blue. So again, this is hen hackle. This is a whiting. And I like them when they've got this sort of webby base and no web at the tips, so it sort of keeps them open when you tie them in. So this one's going in by the tip. So I've just cut a little V out of it there. Spin this up. This is GSP, so it's really slippery, horrible stuff. So that's got to go in there tight. And I'm going to put a little whip finish there, because the minute you take the pressure off this stuff, it goes all slack and slippy, and the hackle sometimes falls out. But sometimes it falls out even if you do this. So now I'm going to help this hackle a little bit. Just loosen that front edge. So when I wrap it, I'm not going to catch those fibers so much. It sort of wraps itself. 3 is plenty. Bring it all back. Anything you don't like, just cut it off. So what we have done is created a step here. Yeah, so there's where the thickness of the stem of that hackle is going to push any wing you put on there up in the air. That's all right if that's what you wanted to do, but I sort of want it to lay a bit flatter. So before I put the wing on, sort of push the hackle flat on top. But on the sides, I still want it to splay out, flat movement. And I hold it back just at the top, not the bottom, just the top. Build up the head. So I'm making the head bigger there. So I've got a nice even taper into the wing. And a bit of my favorite thing in the world, Arctic runner, horsehair, Icelandic horsehair. Again, I can't find it. It's here earlier. Talk amongst yourselves, boys. Oh.
They're all muted, Paul.
Yeah, it was here just now. I'm sure it was. I put it somewhere safe, and just like the blue hackle. My cat's probably got it. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the other camera to show you this, if I can. Yeah, so this is Arctic Runner. It's a horsehair. It comes from Iceland, and this is the winter coat. So it's a wild horse, and they kill them for rugs. You know, but that winter fur is absolutely beautiful. So it's in 3 layers. You know, Iceland's a pretty cold place. I know I've been there in August, it's bad enough. And it's in 3 layers. You've got a really fine under fur. You've got the main length of fur, and then you've got these long, stiff guard hairs, which are the waterproofing for the beast, you know. So it's extremely mobile, extremely fine, really nice to work with. So we'll take a little bit of that. We don't need much. This, so you can see it now. So these are long, really long fibers. So this is a size 8 hook. So these, you can see how long these fibers are. I leave them in. I like that. I sort of like that long, slim, sand ely thing. And I measure the wing against this middle layer. So I put that in about the length of the hook. Then I take everything else out of this. So just run it between your fingers. Get rid of all that under fur that just clogs everything up. So that's the sort of length I'm talking about. Yeah, so I cut it to length then before I tie it in. From here on in, you can't let go of the pressure. So once this wing goes on, you just can't let go of the pressure. So because it'll slip. So get it right flat on top of the shank. The cut ends of the wing fibers, the length of the head you want. So in this case, it's about 6 or 7 wraps long. And just take a loose wrap over it to snug it up and then put the pressure on. Hold the pressure. Look at your wing, wet it a little bit and see if you think it's too fat or too thin. I think that's okay. Keep the pressure on. It's only 2 wraps of thread holding that there. Take a little dab of varnish or glue, whatever you want, just a tiny little dab and put it into those cut ends. And now you've got to work fast. Go down, cover those cut ends, back up to where you started, and that's your wing in. Bit of a whip finish. Let's have a look at the fly. So we've got a nice long, thin, mobile wing. Nice contrasting colours. Don't forget the hackle's blue. Cut your flat in how you want it. Now, every time I tie salmon flies for people, they all want jungle cock on them. And my own, I don't. And I actually feel bad about it. I feel bad about using the stuff. I don't think it's very sustainable, and you know, killing wild birds for fly tying, it's not for me. So I like pretty sustainable sources for materials. But you know, you get guys that that want salmon flies, and they're convinced that jungle cock is the thing. But I'm not, so I'd never put it on my own flies. So I'm going to put a contrasting head on there, something really bright. This is glow white number 4. Yeah, number 4. And all I do is catch it in the front, run it up a couple. And then I whip finish on the fattest part of the head, so it gives that nice little shape, the salmon fly shape that I like. Doesn't matter in the slightest, but it's just something I like. And then finish it with varnish. Good old Cellar is good. I mean, Gavin was talking about it last demo, and it's great stuff. It's great. Super glue is good, but the combination of the two, I like. So just a little drop, and the floss is so porous, it sucks off what it needs from the brush. So you don't actually brush it on; you just let the floss suck it up. Yeah, but you do have to leave that 24 hours before you varnish the top. Otherwise, it will go white, especially when it gets wet. So that's that's a style of salmon fly I like and tie a lot of. They're very similar. The odd color change. This is what that one should look like with the blue hackle. Blue is also good for suing, sea run browns, especially near the salt water. So that's a basic salmon fly. You tie that in various sizes, a couple of different colors, and you're probably covered for everything you want. I fished these on 11 pound leader, normally fluorocarbon, for the smaller flies, up to about 15 for the larger flies. Average size salmon on the us could be 14, 15 pounds. A good one would be 25. About once a year, you'll get a 35, 37. So they're not huge, but they certainly pull. I sort of like the fluorocarbon, not so much for the salmon, but for yanking these flies out of trees, you know? Any questions, boys? Anything I skipped over that? No?
Come on, people, don't be scared.
Okay. The other thing we have a lot in Wales is sea run brown trout, suin we call them. And the rivers they frequent are quite short, very stony, very steep, very little food in them. They haven't got huge populations of brown trout, really, not of any size. And they go out into the estuaries and out to sea to feed. And they come back as some of the most beautiful fish you've ever seen. Beautiful, shiny, ocean blue, silver fish. They run into our rivers from, you know, sort of April time, really through the summer is the main thing. And some of them are very large, some of them not so. Exciting fishing, mostly done at night in the dark. Reason being they're very shy. You know, the rivers are shallow. They hide up in the daytime, and at night they push on up. You know, so it's fly fishing, but not fly fishing really, because you know these fish don't feed, or some of them do. The younger ones maybe do. The bigger ones come in to breed. They've got one thing on their mind, you know. Again, very aggressive fish. So the flies we use can be quite horrendous. So this is a Waddington. This is a treble. Probably one of the most popular sea trout flies in Wales. Black and yellow, black and red, black and blue. But that Waddington mount, yeah. I don't tie these anymore. I'm a single or double hook man, that's it. No barbs, you know, to me it's wickedly effective, but you know, I can't sleep at night fishing stuff like that. But stuff like this I can. So this is a surface lure. So the way we fish these is on a dark night in a slow, steady pool. We cast across and downstream. We let this on floating line on a fairly stout leader, and we let this swing across the surface of the pool, and it causes a furrow in the surface. A muddler would do it. Some of the guys lash a piece of cork to a hook and do it. You know, so this is really just a bit of a fancy surface lure. And the fish come up and they smash it, and I find it good fun because you can't see it. You know it's out there. You know it's coming across because you can feel it. Yeah. And that fish comes from nowhere, and it's normally a big coop in the middle of the darkest night you can imagine, because when the moon's out, it's not so good. And it's a real hard starter, you know. It's good fishing, really good fishing. So this is a surface lure. This is designed to be dragged through the surface. I don't want a tail. Sea trout notoriously take short. So if you've got a big long tail sticking out the back, they big nip at that, nip, and they're not getting at the hook end. But I do like a big single hook, something for them to grab onto. So this is the colorblind me again. So we're gonna have to pretend this is silver, guys, even though it's gold. This is Lagerton braid, nice strong stuff. I quite like it. It's if you break one strand, rest hold it together. You know, and sea trout are quite toothy critters, so it needs to be pretty tough. And I like a nice dub body on these. Spikier the better. So something like squirrel. Doesn't really matter what color it is, because at night everything's black. So nice something that causes disturbance. Seal's fur would be another good option, but again, that's on my list of things I don't like using anymore. But it is a fantastic material. You could use chenille, those sparkly type chenilles, whatever. Anything that causes a bit of a disturbance, and I just nice and roughly dub that forward. This is the gold ribbed hazier version. So all we're doing here is creating a bit of flash, bit of silhouette, a lot of movement on the surface. Like long long, soft hackles on these. So let's have a look. So these are hackles from the back of a chicken. So you know, you've got the neck, you've got the saddle, and then you've got the area of the chicken that the saddle goes over. I'm just going to swap screens again. This is a chicken back, orange one, of course, but the saddle goes either side of it. Yeah, the neck goes over the top of it, and in here you get these really nice, big, soft hackles that are great for salmon flies, sea trout flies. This is a black one. So I've prepared my hackle. I'm going to put in a bit of flash because I think sea trout do like a bit of flash. Again, this is the fine vineyard mirror flash, or whatever he calls it. Just catch a few strands on top. Fold it back. This in. I'll cut that no longer than the length of the hook. And catch in the hackle by its tip. This is yet another way of tying in a hackle. Then you can fold it back and tie over it, secure it. There's going to be a big chunk of wing going on top of this, so you know it's quite a scruffy way of tying in a hackle, but you're not going to see it. Just going to ease those edges again. There's quite a lot of hackle going in there. Very mobile stuff. Just this chicken back. Good old Bernard Matthews. Now I folded the hackle back there and tied over the top of it to keep it secure because the old suing really do smash the flies and they've got a mouthful of teeth. So it's, you know, if you want it to last longer than a couple of fish, you've got to be quite secure with it. So far I've tied that with Danville 6/0. So I'm going to finish the fly there. Most unlikely looking thing, but by God they will. Change threads to something a bit finer and stronger. This is again Beaver's GSP. I'm not worried about the color because you ain't going to see it. You know, you could put on this now. You could put a big foam head. You could, you know, you could do a muddler. You know. Anything that's buoyant, really. But again, you know, I want them to be almost disposable. You know, if you spend a load of time tying on a muddler and cutting it to shape and burning it and doing it and messing about with it, and you know, it's something you don't want to lose, I suppose. So you know, a bit more pragmatic than that. And I do use deer here, but I basically tie a giant LK Caddis. What's that too? Oh, boys, I'm sorry, I've lost that too. Okay, I'll do it with a slightly different type of hair. Hang on, hold. So the type of deer here I'm using for this is something that flares, but not too much. I want it to be stiff and hard. Yeah, it doesn't have to be too long. I don't care what color it is. I need to tie in quite a large clump though, so it's going to be pretty tough stuff. And the beauty of tying on this type of salmon iron is the return eye. So instead of tying a big clump of fur on a round shank, because the fur, what it wants to do is spin, you're tying it on a flat area, which makes it a little bit easier, in fairness. We'll take out a good old clump of fur. Something like that. Get rid of all the nonsense. And then you get your hair stacker. You don't have to stack it, boys. You don't. But you know, I do because I am really. It could be as rough as you like. It really doesn't matter. But I sort of like it to look nice when it's in the box. But in the dark, when it's only you and the sea trout, doesn't really matter. So I take a nice clump of this stuff, and what I want is a large LK Caddis style head. So that's quite a big chunk of stuff sticking out the front of this fly. Flare it up. Keep the thread on, keep the tension on the thread. Pull that back, a couple of wraps underneath, and there's your fly. So when you whip finish this, you know, you sort of go horizontally, coming underneath there, and then pull straight back against the wraps. You get this really, really tight fly off. So what I do then, because I don't want to mess about on the river in the dark, it's bad enough, you know. I don't know if you guys have ever used this. It's a particularly good floatant, TMCO. Anyway, so I just take a little smidgen on that and I work it in the front of that head. And that's it. But you're speechless, lads, aren't you?
Yes, very good.
Speechless. It's like, what the fucking hell is he going to tie that on and catch a fish with it?
No, let me tell you what, Paul, what I most like about what you did tonight was the simplicity. Because
Yeah,
all
easy.
these flies are extremely simple, but every single fly is purpose driven. You motivate every single thing you put on that shank. You know exactly what you want to do. It's not about impressing fishermen, it's about catching fish, and form follows function. So I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I'm going to take a little break, boys, if you don't mind. I need a smoke and a sip of wine. So some more time if you want. I could do a couple of little dry flies that work for me that I quite like. Just trying to give you a bit of variety, really. Yeah, but this one, this is a size 2. It's a big fly, down to a size 10 or a size 8. And like the local boys here now, I mean, there's a couple of lads here now will know exactly what that river's like out there now. Yeah, it's 2 to 3 meters higher than it should be. It'll be running T-red, yeah, and we're watching for it to drop. When that visibility gets down to 6 inches or a foot or 18 inches, and you put a fly like this on, and you run it across the tails of pools, you run it across shallow areas where the fish come up and rest, yeah, that fly will kill brown trout, and you will catch more brown trout on that in those conditions, streamer-wise, yeah. But it's normally when people go fishing. It's normally when people don't go fishing for trout. You know, it's those mad salmon boys out there, and you sort of learn about streamer fishing with salmon fishing because, you know, trout love these horrible salmon flies, believe it or not. Yeah, they smash them. They can see them. They're mobile. They're fished in the areas where the fish are lying. There's no point in fishing over empty water. So you can learn a lot by fishing in coloured water.
Yeah.
Down and across. Swing the fly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Paul, would LK be too stiff for that fly?
No. I like deer hair. I like elk hair, don't get me wrong. I like deer hair because I find it less brittle, especially when it's bleached. You know, when you get bleached elk,
Yeah.
I can be quite brittle. I think the deer hair flares better for this particular style.
Yeah.
If I was doing an elk hair caddis, then yeah, I'd use elk.
Yeah.
You know, or if you look at this is flank fur, right? This is flank from a deer, white-tailed deer.
Yeah.
Even, it's hollow, it's buoyant, it's lovely, it's really nice stuff. Yeah, but if you were to use this on a trout fly wing, it's not suitable because it flares too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you go for something like this. This is from down the middle of the back of a whitetail. Yeah, and it's very stiff and hard, and I'll show you that in a minute. So it's horses for courses, really.
Yeah.
And if you want to experiment with it, I mean, there's a company called Nature Spirit.
Yeah.
That do the best deer hair going, you know, but they do several different varieties, and they design for different jobs. And I get my hair from the guy that supplies them, and fantastic stuff. You know, I really can't say enough good things about Nature Spirit deer hair. It's fantastic.
That's all I use, Paul, to be fair.
It's brilliant stuff, mate.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Let's have a quick fag, boys, if you don't mind.
All right, mate.
Has anybody got any other questions?
Derek, sorry, I'm gonna have to leave, I'm afraid, mate. I shall see you next Tuesday.
Okay, Pete.
Okay, mate. Me and Phil are coming.
Yeah.
But cheers, Paul. Been a
Cheers,
fantastic
Peter.
evening, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, buddy. Been fantastic.
You boys know the non-slip loop for tying on lures or salmon flies? Do you know that knot?
Is it like the Rapala knot?
It's very similar, but the return tag goes up the leader so you don't catch any weed or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, so you tie a double granny. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just on twice.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right.
So now you've got like a little figure eight there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go through the eye. You go through the figure eight, the same direction as it went in. Yeah, so you've got that loop. I'll adjust it now.
Yeah.
So you set the size of the loop to what you want. Pull it tight with a standing end. And then go round, standing end once and back through. Pull it tight.
Yeah. So you get the same action as the Rapala, don't you? You get the wiggle.
Exactly, yeah.
You get the wiggle.
But that tag goes down the way so it doesn't catch things in the water, and it's extremely strong.
Yeah.
The thing you got to remember is when you tie a loop like this, don't make it big enough that the fly can wrap through it. So I would, my loops would be like this size,
Yeah.
So you got a nice stiff leader, nice stiff fluorocarbon leader that keeps the lure in line with your fly line. Yeah. The fly can still articulate.
Yeah, I use a similar knot when I fish for pike because it gives you that movement. And you've got to have that.
And you haven't got with a stiff leader, you haven't got that, you haven't got slack in the leader to take up.
No.
So that's really strong knot. Is my
Right,
friend, he helps me.
Right. We go back to your coca bondi.
Yeah.
Right? The way you tied it.
Yeah.
Now, the way you tie that would be similar to the way I tie it when I don't use a vice when I'm on the bank.
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
if you think of it, the old lads, most of them didn't have vices.
Correct.
My
And the
grandfather was a collier and he never owned a vice, but
There you go.
he could tie up ring dry flies like you wouldn't believe.
There you go. And the flies I took apart were tied onto horsehair leaders. Yeah.
Horsehair.
Yeah. So there was no eye on the hook. Yeah.
That's
And
it.
they used to sell them in dozens. They used to call them sprays. So they'd be in a loop with a dozen flies on the end. And I took them apart. Yeah. And that's exactly how they did it.
And that's the reason why, because they didn't have a
And
vice.
it's relevant today. It's relevant today because, you know, it's just a very economical way of tying.
Yeah. Exactly. Right, with you, Bunny.
Yeah.
Do you find it gets heavy when you fish it because you leave the skin on the body? When you actually tie the
yes.
body in. Right.
Yeah,
then.
but I'm not fishing these with a 4-weight, mate.
No, I know that. Yeah, I fish. My son developed one years ago and is very similar. We call it a big black thing. And what I do is I put the rabbit tail in.
Yeah.
But then the body, I put it in a loop, cut the skin off, turn it on, and just fold it back as I'm tying. It cuts a lot of the weight down.
When I'm doing smaller ones, I don't use the skin at all. So I'll just put a tiny bit of skin in for the tail.
Yeah.
And then I tie the rabbit in tufts, and then spin the head. So like I said, size 12. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So you just remove it. You're basically removing the hide. Because when that gets wet, it gets heavy.
It gets soggy, waterlogged.
Soggy and waterlogged.
But it also helps it sink, you know.
Yeah, well,
so it's a balance thing, you know, and you want it to sink. I think you want it to sink level. You want it to be going down vertically. Hang on, let me turn the other camera on. You know, you want it to sink as level as possible. Again, that stiff leader.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you put some action into the leader, you start to get whatever you want. And the other way of fishing these that's really effective is a dry fly, right? So, okay, don't slag me off yet.
No, I won't.
When the rainbows or browns, even like Landegved or something like that, right? When you're up there in the autumn, when they're feeding on fry, they go into those schools of fry and they smash in there. The tails are going and they're trying to stun them. And the fish float to the top. There's dead fish, there's crippled fish, you know, the little guys.
Right. Yeah.
And they'll take them off the top. Yeah, so you can take a bunny like that and grease it and fish it as a dry fly and it'll still work.
Totally. Just stand on the jetty on Chew Valley in the autumn and just stand You see browns coming up there, you think, oh my God, look at that. And they're doing exactly what you say, and I've seen it many times.
Yeah, so it's a versatile pattern. I tied some, we went, a couple of times we went down to Namibia fishing for tiger fish, you know, on the River Chobe and the Zambezi. And we tied bunnies like you wouldn't believe, you know, great big things. Yeah,
but Paul, the only problem with fishing a tiger fish with a bunny is what? Durability, especially a smaller fish. If a smaller tiger, one fish, fly's gone because they chew that thing.
Do you know what, Gordon? The first tiger fish I caught on a fly rod, right, on a 10-weight fly rod, was 18 kilograms, right?
Yeah.
And it smashed the fly to pieces, you know. And I was the happiest boy in the boat, mate. Who gives a shit?
It's a big. So okay. So what happens is, if you're fishing like a barbel run on the Okavango or whatever, and you got all these tigers. So what happens is these barbel, basically like your wells, similar.
Yeah.
They herd these little bait fish, and they chase them into the channel, and you've got all these tiger fish that are on the outskirts waiting for these bait fish. Now the problem is, if you're fishing a run like that, you go through a fly per fish, eventually you're going to have problems. So most of the guys nowadays, when it comes to tigers, tie synthetic flies.
Sure.
Things like bucktail, hair, hackle, they just get chewed. And and yeah, but I mean, obviously the bunny will work like a bomb. I mean, when the guy started fishing tigers on fly, they used Zonker a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great fish. Hardest fighting fish I've ever caught. Freshwater.
But listen,
anyway.
yeah, you must go fish them in Tanzania. Guys. They get even bigger.
Yeah.
Google it, Tanzanian tigerfish.
Okay. Yeah, I will. God, yeah. That's the only fish I've ever seen that comes into the boat and is still trying to kill you because you're trying to get the hook out of it.
It's Africa, Paul. It's Africa.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. The other one I liked down there, Gordon, was Nemwe Breen.
Robuster, yeah, Nembwe. It's
Yeah,
like a
robuster,
cross
that's it.
between it's almost like it's got like a mouth, like a largemouth bass.
Yeah. Beautiful
also
fish. Good
sits-
eating.
Yeah, very good.
Very good eating. Yeah. We used to go in the morning. We had 3 boats. We were fishing from 2, and the other one was the camp boat. So the camp boat would go out in the morning, and then we'd fish down to it. And when we saw the tents, we'd stop. And they used to say, right, we want 6 Nemwe for dinner. So like before you did anything else, you had to catch dinner. And yeah, really good fun. And I enjoyed them as much as the tiger fish. So right tight into the bank, casting tight into the bank, in the tall reeds, and they would sort of tucked in, they'd come out and smash it. It was good. Yeah, good
No,
fun.
it's lovely.
Yeah.
good.
Anyway, do you want to dry fly, boys? And then I'll call it a night if you don't mind.
Let's do it dry, yeah.
Yeah.
Go on then.
Yeah. Just a quick one. A Caddis. Simple little thing. Probably catch more trout on this than anything else. I'm not saying it's anything wonderful, but I fish it, and that's probably why I catch more. So this is size 12. Again, I've used a wet fly hook, but hey ho. So I catch him behind the eye, just a couple of turns. And then some dubbing. So I'm going to use that squirrel if I can find it. My favorite dubbing. Literally grows on trees.
Grey squirrel.
Yeah. Well, I've got a friend of mine called Trevor, right? He
Shoots
lives
up
on the
here.
road here. Trevor Watkins. I don't know if you know him. Have you come across him, Gav?
No.
He's 76, right? He's a proper country boy. He's lived in the Usk Valley all his life. Grew up in the Bryn, Pontypool Park, And oh yeah, shooting, hunting, fishing, mate. Honestly, and he's got a memory like you wouldn't believe. Lovely guy, really good fisherman. But he's got a vendetta on all the squirrels in the valley.
Yeah.
He lives up on the side of the valley in the woods, and he shoots them. So I get these texts. He calls them bird table squirrels. So I get these texts in the morning. I got 2 this morning. And I get these. Yeah. Anyway, that's how I get them. So we put a bit of dubbing on there. I start at the eye. I take it back to the bend. So again, there's no thread underneath it or anything like that. You don't need to. Then I use the thread. This is GSP. You could be anything. Just to tighten it up. It's the strongest rib you'll ever get. A little bit of CDC. For this, yeah, CDC. Mallard Duck.
Wild.
Very wild, yeah.
Very wild.
Yeah. So in this bag, there's 3,000 feathers, all exactly the same, 3 centimeters long. Well, there's less than 3,000 now.
You counted them? You counted them?
I didn't. The mad bastard I bought it off did.
Oh. Well, this is the thing. There's a difference between wild duck and the normal CDC that you buy because the oils are different.
Yeah.
Huge difference, yeah.
The oils are different.
Huge, yeah.
Because
so I'm going to use this CDC as an underwing fly, and this is what provides the flotation, okay? And I want it to be flat on top of the shank. I don't want it to be in a bunch. I want it to be like almost like a shovel over the top of the fly. A couple of turns, bring it in.
Nice.
Yeah, so the fly, the body of the fly is in the water. The rest of the fly floats on the underside of the CDC. So a couple of nice tight turns for that. So there's 3 feathers on this for a size 12. You probably get away with 2. This is a really high floating, fast water dry fly. This isn't for gentle glides. This is for mountain streams. This is for quick water. And you want it to be visible to you as much as a fish, really, because I don't know if it's my eyesight, but sometimes I find it difficult on that side of the water to track a fly. You know.
Yeah.
You know the sort of water you've been there, mate. It's it's bubbly. It's
It's like the top end of the tees.
Yeah, you got it. Or the top end of the husk, even.
Yep.
So then I'm going to use some of this hard deer here that comes from down the back. They call it the back strap, down the middle of the back of the deer. If you get it on the elk, it's much longer and thicker stuff, but the deer is quite fine.
Yeah.
You don't need much of this. You don't need much of it. At least I'm going to say that much. And I'm going to stack it. Again, you don't have to, but. Measure it for length. I'd like it to be as long, maybe a little bit longer. Yeah. And again, I want that nice elk ear head, because sometimes when these flies swing across the current, you get that V in the current, the fish will take it, you know?
Well, it's like the natural.
Skated caddis, yeah.
Exactly.
So I want that little bit of extra length. I cut it to length. I bring the head, I want the head to be, towards the front of the eye of the fly. Gentle wrap, tight wrap, pressure's on. Lift the head, go under it once. Keep everything tight, never let go. And then that horizontal whip finish underneath the head. And pull back against the wraps. Really tight. And that's it.
Yep. Simple but effective.
Yeah. I tie these in different sizes, obviously, but I have a thing. I've got this thing called the van box, right? So I've got a box of flies in a van. Well, now I haven't got a van, I've got a car, but same thing. So it's a big box of flies. So I'll tie these about once every 2 years, but I'll tie hundreds of them. So I'll buy 100 size 18s down to 12s, and I'll tie them and put them in the van box. And there's various other flies that I do that with. Like here's a van box of salmon flies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I stick them in the back of the car.
They're always
and wherever
there.
I go, if I run out of size 18s, mate, I've got hundreds of the bloody things, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
And you just go, oh, I'll have some of them, I'll have some of them. Tim comes along and nicks about 40 of them. You know what I mean? But that's the way I like to do it. And then you have different hatches up and down the river every year. Right now we're waiting for yellow May duns. I mean, they're just about starting. You know, we've got massive floods at the moment. Normally happen in April, which is slowing it down. But you have these specific hatches: yellow Mays, Danica, Mayfly. You know,
Yep.
Arch Brown. You know, the specific ones that Granham was another one that come off for a short period, 10 days, 2 weeks. You know, but most of the time we're fishing stuff like this that just, you know, the sort of generic, simple patterns that you can just throw into trees, throw into bushes. If it sinks, cut it off, stick it in your belt, put another one on. You know, it's like that shotgun fishing that we do a lot on, especially on the upper river where it's fast and rocky and quick and nice. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it, boys.
Perfect.
I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you, Paul. Very good.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, Paul.
One little question for you, if you're still there.
I am.
Do you tie fully dressed?
Yes.
Right.
Why would you want to do that, though? Why would you want to do that, Gavin?
Because it's fun.
Because it's fun. Exactly. Prestige. I suppose it's just prestige, something to do in it. But do you use
Yeah,
plucked
I agree.
feathers or molted?
Do I use what?
Do you use plucked feathers or molted for the fully dressed wings?
I use Swan.
You use, oh, you do really?
I do, yeah, and I buy it in America, and it's yeah.
Who you buying from? John, who you buying your Swan from?
I'll send you an email.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Like, I remember years ago speaking to Davey Wharton.
I
And
know
he said,
Davey well, yeah.
yeah, and I'm talking 30 plus years ago.
Yeah. Before he moved out there, he done a runner, didn't he?
He was working for, doing a bit of work for
Okay.
Jeff Clinton, Superior Fly Design, well, whatever. And
Yeah.
I remember him saying, you've always got to use the plucked feathers, not the molted, because the end's free.
I've not, I haven't come across that.
Because,
yeah, sorry, no, I understand what he's saying there, of course.
yeah, because, of course, when the bird's molted the feather, it's finished with it.
Yeah.
And then you get the little frayed ends on the ends. And every single turkey feather I bought, I've got all frayed ends and they do my absolute head in because you can never match them up.
But okay, but whoa, Gavin.
Yep.
Why don't you buy turkey from Cook's Hill?
I have.
Because the last turkey I saw of his was great.
Yes,
Yeah,
Steve,
it
Steve
varies,
is
yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
The natural feathers are perfect, but it's the dyed feathers to get the colours in the wings. I don't know why.
Dyed over white, you mean, like for the
Yes.
strip, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah,
Swan it just drinks up dye. It's like really strong colours.
yeah.
But you're limited on the size. You know, like, Swan, the ones I'm tying are probably
4 inches?
1.0 maybe. 2.0 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of the ones I tie are quite small, so they're like 6s, 4s, But,
like you said, I don't think I'd ever fish one, but it's just a prestige of tying them. Feel good.
I have fished them. I don't see the point of tying something and not fishing it really. But most of the ones I do tie I sell. But I don't know. I mean, it goes back to that conversation I had with that guy about what would those salmon fly tyers of the 19th century, 18th century even think about salmon flies today,
Yeah.
And he was referring to modern classic flies, so built wing flies, yeah. And his view was, his words were, I think they'd be very pleased with what we're doing. And I was thinking, mate, they'd be after Arctic runner and beadheads and coneheads and tube flies and treble.
They would.
Of course they would. Of course they would.
Hey, I could tell you, like with trout fishing, when gold heads and tungsten beads come around, it changed trout fishing and grayling fishing.
Evolutionary, yeah.
Totally changed it overnight, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
It was going down the river, and I was fishing.
Not for the better,
and then all of a sudden, that's all you could do was blush, blush, blush. People with tungsten beads, but my God, they catch fish.
They do, mate. They do, especially. Well, they catch everything. Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of masters here in this meeting tonight. I mean, real masters of that technique, and I'm not going to embarrass them by calling them names, but I'll tell you what, I've seen particularly one of the guys in this meeting right now fish beadheads like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, I would.
Incredible. And it's impressive, really impressive. Different set of skills, different style.
Oh yeah, it's one of the techniques we used to use when I used to do the teams on the rivers. One of the techniques we used to use was leave 2 boys go in front of you and fish behind them with the gold heads where they feet are and catch fish.
Sandwine shuffle, yeah.
Exactly, but you'd catch fish even on wild browns.
Yeah.
Literally 5 minutes after they walk through it. So it's the gold heads have changed it big time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember reading an article by Roman Moser. Probably the first time I ever saw a gold head published anywhere. And I saw it, I thought, the fuck is that? You know?
Yeah.
And he did these videos he was selling, VHS. You know what I mean? I bought a couple of his videos and I watched, and it was just. And I went up the Usk. With a gold ribbed, hazier gold head. It wasn't a tungsten bead. They weren't tungsten beads then. They were just brass or whatever they were.
Just brass.
Oh my God. It was like a light going on, you know?
Yep.
Vicious things.
Yeah. Well, I use, let's say there's 2 beads on one of my flies. There's 2 beads. It's normally a 5mm and a 3mm tungsten behind it.
Yeah.
And it goes bloof.
What do
When
you
they're
call
a bit high, depth charge. I call them depth charges.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, the fish don't have to pick them up. They don't have to pick them up.
I mean, Tim, I don't know if Tim's still in here. Tim down in New Zealand, he talks about fishing for rainbows. It's not necessarily his style of doing it, but the way it's done on, I'm going to say, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Tongariro, Tim? Is he still here?
Oh, I think he's gone.
You're right. It is Tongariro.
Tongariro, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
they
a trib
call
of the of Taupo. Yeah. Tongariro.
Yeah, and they call them the Tongariro bombs, and they're fishing. Yeah, and they're fishing in winter for rainbows. From what I've seen, quite a fast flowing, heavy river, you know, and they like loads of weight on them.
Yep. Dean Kibble's out there, isn't he? And he's doing it regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's catching some really nice fish. Jealous. Jealous.
Yeah. Anyway, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
If you want me to do anything else at a later date, feel free. Yeah, thanks for showing up, boys.
Thank you, Paul. Very good.
That's really good. Really good.
Cheers, Paul.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, lads.
Paul.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye all.
Cheers. See you now. Bye-bye, Paul. Thanks again.
Tinsel Trout, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Good night, Eric.
The grandsons are staying to eye, yeah.
Thanks, so good night. Cheers. Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Good night, Paul. Good night.
Take care, Tim.
Yeah, I'll see you
Thank you.
Tuesday.
See you on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll see you Tuesday. You all right, Gordon?
I'm good, man. That was a good session.
Yeah, he's a good talker, isn't he, Paul? He's knowledgeable.
Nice, simple way of tying as well.
He
Yeah.
ties a good fly.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
And let me tell you what, I see a lot of ties, and most of them are quite crap. He can actually
Yeah.
tie a fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I was watching YouTube videos this weekend. 95% people on YouTube cannot tie. They
Yeah.
suck.
Yeah.
Basics, small things.
Yeah. Paul, I spent a lot of time at Paul's place. He's got a beautiful tying room. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful place.
I can stop the recording now.